So today I'm going to be running through the marketing that we do at Draper Hinks. Mail shot marketing that we do by post, which is pretty much all the marketing we do. And we have a database of all accounting practices in England. They're the ones that we... Is anybody timing this? Should I get my timer? Okay, database in England. And by postcode, we divide our database into 9 areas. So what we do is we write a letter to everybody in the first area, which includes Hemel Hempstead, Coventry, Leicester, Luton, Northampton, Milton, Keynes, Oxford, and other places. So everybody will get a letter to that postcode. So the letter we send out looks like this. Take a copy and pass it on.
Martin won't need one of these because you've already received one, right?
I have, yes.
Just the one.
So in week 1, we'll send this letter in the post, and it says, you know, do you want to find a buyer for your practice? So it really goes through, we've sold over 125 practices in the last few years. What you'll get if you work with Draper Hinks, it'll say, if you're thinking about selling, then contact us. So really, it's a general marketing letter. So this letter will get sent to everybody in week 1. Then in week 2, we'll send the same letter. We'll obviously change the person's name and address. So we call this period 1. Does this make sense? That the same letter will get sent to all 9 people, and that's the first period. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we have period 1, period 2, period 3, and period 4. So we'll have one letter sent out in period 1 to everybody in all 9 areas. Then we'll send out a different letter in period 2 to all 9 areas. And the same again for period 3 and period 4.
Is a period sort of like a 3 months, that 12 months?
No, we start in, I think it's the 10th of February, and we finish at the end of October, because November, December, January accountants are busy with their self-assessment tax return season, so our marketing is 9 months. So everybody will get 4 letters that we write to. So we have 9 areas, we have 4 periods, so we do 36 mail shots in the year. So on the back of the letter, we have a case study. So take one for me, take one, and...
Do you do this every year?
Every year. This is our marketing, every year. So on the back of the letter, we have a case study. So there are 4 letters that go out each year, and the case study, have you all got it? Mm-hmm. You all got one? So the case study, you'll see this letter, the back of this letter, or the letter was sent out in 2016, and we let them know details of a practice that was sold in 2015. So it's always within the last 12 months we let them know what we're doing. So in this one, we sold a practice that had fees of 250,000. So that's £250,000 turnover. We let people know where it was. So in this case, it was Cheshire. Qualified FCA. Do you know what FCA is? Yeah. That's chartered accountant. And the age of this vendor was 67. The average age of our vendors is 66. But the guy, you got time it, Martin? The age of this vendor was 67. From them telling me, Nicola, we want to sell I want to sell my business, from start through to completion, it was 8 months. And the type of practice, he was a sole practitioner. So how he was paid was he was given 3 payments. He was given 3 lots of money, and it says how paid. He was paid 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So multiple that was offered is 1 times GRF. That means the buyer who bought this paid once times his turnover. Does that make sense? So they paid £250,000 for this practice.
Is that standard in all cases or not?
1 times fees is about right, but if you're in London, where there's a lot more buyers interested, it might go up to 1.2, 1.25. Well, 1.25, so that's a quarter more of 250,000. Was that 75,000 more? So it makes a difference. The multiple makes a big difference. But we get multiples below 1 and we get multiples above 1. Okay, below 1 will be something like if the clients are all quite elderly. So if I've got somebody who is maybe 70, I've got one last week we're marketing, he's 73, well, a lot of his clients will be quite old. That will make a downward pressure on what people are offering. Dependent on what the fees are, if you've got lots of fees that are £250 a pop, you've got thousands of them, that you won't get so much money as if you've got one that's like, maybe each client's £1,000 and there are fewer clients. So that makes a difference. So then we say with this case study, when was the seller paid? So the seller was paid on completion, and then after 13 months and 25 months. So how this works is the seller is selling 250,000, and on completion he gets 1/3. So on completion he's paid 83,000, but the buyer gets 250. Does that make sense? So the day that the ownership changes, so it's no longer the seller's practice, it's the buyer's practice, the seller gets 83,000 from the buyer. At the end of 12 months, the buyer's had 250,000. The seller's only been given 83. So at the end of in the 13th month, the seller will be given another 83,000, and the buyer in that second year will get 250,000. You'll get the turnover. So at the end of the second year, so the third payment, £83,000 paid again.
Does
So
the tranche change depending upon how many clients stay with a new buyer?
The tranches stay the same. You'll pay 1/3, but you will take some money away if a client doesn't stay. So I'm just doing simplistic, because you're right. Yes,
So
that's called
basically
clawback.
For this, you've got to make sure that your clients can stay for
Yes.
2 years afterwards.
I'm saying that all clients stay, which doesn't happen, but for simplicity's sake. So what this is saying is the seller gets 83,000, and at the end of 12 months, the buyer's had 250. The seller then gets another 83,000. At the end of 2 years, the buyer's got 250,000. So in 2 years, the buyer's had 500,000.
But only a turnover, it's not profit.
It's turnover. Yes.
Yes, it's only
Yes,
turnover.
exactly.
It's not profit.
No, it's not profit, but then if the buyer is buying and putting those fees into his existing office, so the amount that, the cost of the buyer is reduced, the buyer might not take on all the staff, so again the cost is reduced. So it depends on the situation, but you're right. But what my point is, to buy £250,000 worth of turnover, you might not have to pay out an awful lot initially. Okay, so this vendor, this 67-year-old sole practitioner, he had 3 offers. And what happened was, with the office and the staff, he decided, but he kept some of the staff. And the results of the sale was that he had a lifestyle change. He's now retired and he travels the world. And that's what we put. On the back of each letter, we put 3 case studies, and we also put 3 testimonials. So, have I got that? I don't know. So 3 case studies at the end, on each letter, 3 testimonials, and we send 4 letters each year. So we have 4 letters, each with 3 case studies. So we do 12 case studies a year. We do 4 letters and 3 testimonials, so we do 12 testimonials. Oh, hang on, let's go back. So this is what the back of the letter looks like. So you can see when we send out, the letter, the back of the letter looks like that. Does that make sense? So that's the letter given out, sent out. That's the back of the letter. And what happens is each time we send out a letter, we treat this a bit like a newsletter. And these are actual case studies. All right? So you can see that we've got the first one, the vendor, which we just talked through, 67. The second one, the vendor was 72. And in the third one, the vendor was 55. And then we do 3 testimonials. Now with the testimonials, we put the name of the vendor and where they were. And in order to use the testimonials, I get signed permission from the vendor to use the testimonial and use their name. Because if you go on a website and it says, we think you're brilliant, we think you're wonderful, client Exeter or client Southampton or client Carlisle, you don't know if they are true testimonials. So we send these out, 12 of these on the back of 4 letters, and that constitutes a newsletter. So anybody thinking about selling a practice, what they get from us is these every year, so they know and are informed by us what's happening in the marketplace. We also, with the letter, send out an invitation to meet an expert. And that's me. Pass those on. So this is, so you've got the letter, you've got the front of the letter, you've got the case studies on the back of the letter, and you have an invitation. And the invitation says, meet an expert who can help you sell your practice, attend a free one-to-one meeting at whatever hotel I'm going to be at, and it'll say a little bit about me, that I've sold 125 practices to date, and then it'll tell people where I will be. So each week I'll be at a different venue to meet sellers face to face. Okay? Now week 1, period 1, this is one of our USPs, I go out and meet sellers. So in week 1, they're always on a Tuesday. Northampton, Birmingham, Cambridge, St Albans, Croydon, Southampton, Preston, Manchester, Sheffield. So that's where I will be at different hotels to meet people who are serious about selling their businesses. So 3 meeting times on here. It says Nicola will be available to meet you 10:30, 12:30, 12:32, 32, 34:30. They have to phone up and book an appointment to meet with me. I give them 2 hours, and yes, I will do 6 hours in a row, back to back, which I find quite tiring. When the second one comes in, if I got 3 meetings back to back, I will say to the people here, may I buy you lunch? Sometimes they say no, in which case I don't get a break. And I find there are days I find that quite difficult, doing 6 hours straight without a break. But I will offer 3 meeting slots, or they can book a phone appointment the next day. So on here it says, if you want to talk to Nicola face to face, these are the times she is available, or you can book a a phone appointment the next day. So Draper Hinks mail shop marketing, that's what we do. And in 2016 we sent out just over 40,000 letters. Any questions?
You say that in that first testimonial it says that of course the purchaser picks up the cost. So that's obviously your fees.
Yes.
Does that substantially impact on them?
So
The
on
sellers?
the buyer always pays our fee.
The buyer pays?
Yes, the purchaser.
All right.
The purchaser, so the purchaser always pays. The reason is, in theory, if we have a practice for sale, bearing in mind the buyer will pay over a period of time and get all the fees, it's quite an attractive proposition for most buyers who want to grow their business. It's the quickest way to grow an accountancy practice is to buy fees. And we have a lot more buyers than sellers, so the buyer pays our cost. If we had a lot more sellers than buyers, the seller would pay our cost. The seller pays us an admin fee for doing it, but it's not as much as the fee we charge the broker.
I assume you don't get paid in tranches.
No, I don't. I get paid on completion in one, altogether. Thank you, but I have to wait 8 months.
Is it question time? Oh yeah. So what are the main problems you have between the sale and the third payment if it's in 3 tranches? I mean, because I'm just thinking, what if the buyer is losing lots of clients due to not giving a shit or general incompetence?
Yeah. Happens.
It's our business term.
Would
It
the,
happens.
Obviously, the seller would not be best pleased with
We had a situation where I sold a practice in Solihull, and the buyer was a chartered accountant and said he would, on completion, he would contact all the clients of the practice that he'd bought, and he didn't. And the seller had told all his clients that he wasn't dealing with it anymore. The buyer said, well, I'll tell them all that they can come to me. And he made no contact with all the clients. The clients were in limbo and didn't know what to do. So they all went back to the guy who sold and said, well, can you do it? And he said, no, I can't, because I've signed an agreement to say that I'm not going to take you back. And the buyer refused. Well, he just didn't get round to it. He just said, oh, I'll tell them when I'm ready. But 3 months down the line, the seller had lost a lot of clients because they'd gone elsewhere to find another accountant, and unfortunately the seller had a heart attack and ended up in hospital through the stress and the pressure of being told by the buyer that he would do something and he didn't.
Is that not in the contract?
No. Well, no, because the buyer says he will and then didn't. So it's not normally written in the contract, it's normally an agreement, and I still get paid. I get paid on completion.
Still, there's a lot of trust then, isn't there, between the
Totally, totally.
I picked up a number of clients when that similar thing happened in Rugby. Somebody packed up business up, sent it off to another accounting practice. They never got in touch with me. And I had phone calls saying, oh yeah, well, these people packed up, the new one hasn't contacted me. And people I met networking, and yeah, I must have picked up at least half a dozen different clients from that.
It's a good way to pick up business. That's happened a few times. I can count.
Point of view, then they don't get the money going forward then, do they?
The seller is the one that loses out.
Yeah.
The buyer pays the first tranche, so for the 250,000, the buyer pays 83,000. Most accountants, if they spend money, want to get value for money. Most accountants, if they're thinking, well, I mean, 83,000 is a lot of money to spend. Most accountants, if they're spending that kind of money, want to make sure they get a return, and they'll put every effort in to make it happen. But not all. Not all.
How, as much as you said it before, how do you value what the business is worth?
You usually look at what the turnover is, but there's a difference between, I put GRF.
Oh, right.
GRF is gross recurring fees.
Right.
So if you've got a situation where somebody's turnover last year was 250,000, but 50,000 of that was because they had a share sale or they had a couple of management buyouts and they had some one-off work, you take off the one-off work, and what you're selling is the stuff that comes in, year out, day, you know, month in, month out. That's the recurring fees, and you sell the recurring fees.
So it's annual, that's what you
Annual, yeah. But then you also take into account the age of the clients, you take into account the distribution of the clients, you take into account the work done, how it's charged. There's lots more to take into account. But the theory is it's based on what the turnover is.
Well, I mean, the seller meets the buyer,
Yes,
and therefore the seller has a discretion to say no to a particular buyer.
absolutely.
Because I mean, if you've got a practice, you're a sole practitioner, you've built up your ethos, you know how you're going to work and what your clients want from you. So you're going to sell it to another accountant that does the same.
Most sole practitioners say to me, I want to sell my business, I want to sell it to somebody who's like me but 30 years younger.
Yeah, indeed.
Is really what they're looking for. So what we do is we set up a day when the seller will meet possibly 2, 3, 4 buyers individually, and then they'll come up with who they like. I get them to rate them out of 10. Who do you like best? 10 out of 10 means really good. Give them 1 out of 10 for turning up. And an etiquette says you don't say thank you very much, I don't like you till the coffee's gone cold. So you give them a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and then give them 3 minutes before you say it's not going anywhere. I have been in meetings where I've had to stop the seller hitting the buyer because the buyer, yes, because the buyer has been incredibly rude, and that doesn't go down very well. But I do. You can see I do travel a lot around the country.
Are the buyers, are they mainly sole traders, or are they?
Well, a buyer can be a sole trader, 2, 3 partner practice, a small regional, a large regional, a national. I will sell to anybody. I need a deal.
What's the
percentage?
Yeah, what's the greater? Is it always you just get the full range?
Full range,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there are more sole practitioners than nationals. Yeah, but I'll sell to anybody.
Your expertise is matching the buyer with the seller.
Yes. My expertise is saying to a seller when they speak to me, what is a realistic expectation from the sale of that practice. I then go to market to find buyers, and then buyers say to me, what will they accept? So I normally say to buyer, well, offer this, and I'll say to a seller, this is what you can expect, and try and put the two together to get the deal.
In other words, an estate agent for accountants.
No, I'm not. There's a difference between an agent and a broker, and I'm a broker. There's a big difference. There's a very big difference. I'm not an agent. I'm a broker.
But from the buyer's point of view, the buyer is looking to buy people that will stay with them for
to protect
very long.
Protect their future tranches.
Yeah,
if nothing
very
else.
long
Absolutely.
period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you done studies as to how long clients?
I don't ask.
accountants-
Post sale. Post sale.
I mean, generally, do you have a
I do.
Do you have a statistic that you quote to your sellers and your buyers as to
How long a
client is likely to stay with an accountant?
Well, what I do know is that most accountancy practices will have a 10% attrition per year. Because people leave, they go away, they move away, they die, they retire, they go out of business. So 10%. So if that's the working percentage, over 10 years, no clients are going to be
I
left.
suppose that will factor into the valuation.
But that's
because you
normal.
have a-
That's normal with
attrition.
any business.
It's normal attrition.
Normal.
So what I think was being asked was the additional attrition from changing from one accountancy practice to another.
That'll be factored in, though.
On the day of completion, 70% of clients will stay through inertia. On the day of completion, you just don't know which of the 30% that won't stay. So you've got to deal with everything. So if you've got to heap on the TLC to go, here's the person who's taking over. They're really good. You work with them. They're great. So nobody knows. Nobody knows because it depends on how it's done, who does what. Other than
So essentially, the 70%, if you go on those figures, then those second and third tranches will be smaller.
they will be. They're always smaller. You're absolutely right. They are always smaller. Yes. But what you want to do with the buyer and the seller is say that if the seller, who now no longer, like in our case, he's off travelling the world. But if the seller can stay on for a period post-sale and then introduce a new business, it will offset anybody that leaves. So if a client leaves because they've gone out of business or retired, and the seller says, yes, but I've got a new client, let's offset that. So there are mitigating things that you can put in place.
But let's face it, if you're 70 years old you don't know how many years you've got left, do you? So you'll probably want to go travelling around the world straight away. You don't be waiting for
Well, he's 67. Yeah, he's 67. The one that we started marketing last week is 73. The one we started marketing yesterday, I think he's 67. I've got another one coming up. I spoke to yesterday. He's 42. He said, I'm 42 years old, I've been doing it for 20 years and I didn't want to do an accountancy in the first place. So I went, oh, commiserations.
If practices, clients are predominantly startups, or say those that have been in business less than 3 years, would that be factored into the value of the business?
Well, it depends on what the buyer will offer, but you can sell.
Did they have to disclose that? Or
yes, I ask how long have they. I ask how long.
Questionnaire.
I have a questionnaire for your top 20 clients by fee size. How long have they been a client? And if most of them are less than 2 years, it will affect what you get paid, because you haven't got the longevity. You haven't got the.
Probably the attrition rate as well.
The attrition may. It depends on how it's sold. I mean, I sold a practice last year, and I think 80% of the clients had been there less than 3 years, but she was emigrating to Canada in January and was pregnant. So she was emigrating, she was pregnant, and she was leaving the country. And so we had to find a buyer very quickly, and the amount that was offered was less. So, because she's not going to be there to do a handover, because she's Canada. There we go. Any other questions?